we ever this close? I don't remember being this close. Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the July 22nd Curriculum Committee. We have everyone present today. Want to call this meeting to order, and we'll begin with approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
And I just want to confirm, we have everything on there we want to discuss today?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And we have approval of the meeting minutes from our meeting on June 17th.
Motion to approve the minutes from the June 17th meeting.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll begin our discussion and information only. First up, Summer Learning Camp update. Dr. Breedlove.
Thank you, board members, for your time this morning. Quick update on Summer Learning Camp. Of course, as you know, we have 20 sites still going. We are currently in our 5th week, and we have one more week to go after this week. And so at this point, of course, we've had over 5,300 students that we sent out invitations to. 5,200 of them indicated that they would like to enroll, and our current, if I go week by week, our attendance rates, week 1 was at 73.2%. Week 2, we jumped to 76.5%. Week 3, 74.4%. And then last week was 70.3% coming back after the 4th of July week. We are still collecting that attendance this week. I know in speaking to several of our site administrators coming back after last week, they made personal phone calls to parents of students that had been in attendance and weren't there the week coming back after July 4th. So we do expect that number to jump up. Once again, visiting sites, there's just so many highlights of the activities and engagement of our students across the board. Really excited. And of course, at the high school level, it's about helping students earn back credit from credit that was lost this past year. Many of our sites across the board visiting, we had visits from the Book Bus. We visited Discovery Place, Raptor Center, Atrium Health. We've had BASF Corporation step in and provide STEM activities. We've had Snakes Alive. Union County Community Arts Council has stepped up and been a part of our summer learning camp. Diamond Dales, which is the mobile gym mining learning experience for students, has made their way into Union County Public Schools, into our summer camp, as well as Discovery Ed. We've taken field trips to the YMCA, Stevens Creek Nature Preserve, Union County Ag Center, Union County Library, the Monroe Science Center, which is brand new and continues to develop, and Wingate University. If you've not been to the Monroe Science Center or have seen it, it is phenomenal. And Dr. Houlihan, myself, and several members from the academics team got a sneak peek, and we got to go and play with all of the activities inside. So I sat in the hurricane and hurricane force winds at 73 mile an hour winds in that. And of course, it messed up my hair and everything else. My tie was flying. But anyway, the point is the students are going to love it. And it's right here in the adults, and it's right here in our backyard. And I want to just congratulate Monroe and Union County for putting that together. It is really special, and I hope that you get a chance to visit that. And as we look at continual improvement, like we always do, we do have a survey that started yesterday that has gone out to parents of students who attended, students in grades 3 and above, and then, of course, our teachers as well. We will get their feedback. Obviously, the crystal ball is uncertain, but looks like probably going to be repeating this again next year. And so when we do it, even though initially as an observer and getting feedback, it was phenomenal, and it still is phenomenal. Next year, we want it to be even better. So, Madam Chair, that concludes my report.
If I could real quick, I've had some parents reach out to me with children enrolled in the summer program, and they were getting a little confused on the masking issue. And I just want to make it clear that UCPS, the board has voted to go mask optional effective August 1st. So we are still under session law, which requires us to utilize the masking through the remainder of the summer session. So that's why you get the phone messages or the alerts or being told that your child enrolled in the summer program has to wear a mask. It won't be effective until August 1st, which is a couple days after the summer session is completed.
Do you have any feedback, especially from the high school summer sessions, how our students are progressing on any courses that they need towards graduation or state tests? Have you gotten any feedback on our high school students? Are they getting those credits completed to move forward for the fall and not have to repeat them?
A vast majority of them are. Principals seem to be very happy with the turnout. And of course, we've, as part of our summer this year, we've added additional resources into the distance labs, for example, and we've hired on teachers to go in and work with students that are taking not just the full course, right, but even those that are taking credit recovery courses. And that's something that we haven't done before. And so when we talk about lessons learned, that's a lesson learned because that has seemed to has really helped a lot of our students progress through there. Some students, you know, and I was one of them, you know, taking an online course is extremely difficult. But when you've got that level of support, still have to do the work, but now I can ask questions. I've got somebody, rather than just having our distance learning facilitator in there, which they do a great job, but the overwhelming numbers, we added that, and we would like to continue that if given the opportunity to do so in the future. But yes, the feedback is very positive about students. Students that are taking EOCs or final exams will do that next week. Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Yeah, sure.
And you kind of piggybacked on it. I was going to ask the pros and cons of this summer learning, and you mentioned one about the credit repair is a good component that has been added. What are some of the other things that possibly for next year that we can help improve, if that makes sense? I know it's still going on, but just kind of looking at what has happened and what's transpired, and so that next year will be even greater. Hopefully we won't have a school year like we are coming out of, prayerfully, but
yes, sir.
Just curious to know.
You know, I think one of the things just at the district level, once again, is communication. We've learned a lot about how we get information out, how we get, you know, even though parents may have said, I want my child to join, we didn't get quite the turnout on that. So ways that we can work to get better. I think that's on a managerial aspect. As far as the day-to-day operations, we will allow our surveys to really tell what went well and then what are some areas that we'll need to improve. And so I will piggyback on that to say it's so important for our stakeholders that were a part of summer learning camp to give us that feedback. We need it and we want it and we crave it because we do want to provide the best product that we can to our citizens.
I have a question. This would not include, of course, graduating seniors, but I'm wondering if we retain the data for students that we identified at risk, invited them to attend, they did not attend, well, it really could be either way. Can we alert their teacher for this upcoming school year that we identified that student at risk? They chose or were not able to attend the summer session. So here's a heads up. Is that something that we can track? And could you see value in letting, let's say it's a third grader, and they're struggling. We offered them the opportunity to come to summer session. They weren't, for whatever reason, weren't able to make it. I think it would be very beneficial to alert their fourth grade teacher of the potential, how do I want to say this? The potential learning gap that we were not able to address, or they were not able to address over the summer. Would that, I would think that information would be helpful to the fourth grade teacher.
That's our schools have on file those who are identified as needing to come and those who actually came. And I think a good practice would be to proactively let teachers know that information so that they can become prepared. And not just that teacher, but other individuals in that building. Because for whatever reason, I know that one of the things, to go back to Pastor Kirkpatrick's question, that I wish for next year, we have more kids that need to be in the summer learning camp or that want to be in the summer learning camp, but because of staffing, we could not provide that. And so I think one of the things we've learned is hopefully we won't have a year next year like we did this past one, but what can we do differently to recruit more of our staff to come on board for part of this opportunity? But the short answer is yes, Mr. Sides.
I just want to caution, that type of information. A lot of our teenagers have jobs to help support their families. And so, so they may not be able to take, time out of their day to go do this because they are working. And then a lot of the younger students may have to go spend the summers with their grandparents so that, parents can work and catch up from all of the struggles and things that we went through this year. So, there are extremely valid reasons why a student may not have been able to accept this opportunity.
Right. I agree. I didn't mean this as like a disciplinary thing. I meant it as a heads up to the teacher for an option for tutoring, just so the teacher has a better feel for her class rather than a couple weeks, a month into it where you finally get to know the kids and get a feel for where they are. You already have a heads up in knowing what challenges you're going to have. That's my only point on that.
And like you said, it would help know if we need math tutors or reading tutors or whatever at different grade levels. So I think that would be extremely helpful. Are there any other questions or comments about the summer camp update? If not, we will move to social studies curriculum writing update.
As you all know, social studies curriculum writing has been an ongoing process. We did get from the state last week the unpacking documents for grades 6 through 12. And of course, we are currently working, continuing to work on that. And jumping to the end result next week, we expect you all to be able to access that curriculum. You will receive the rights to access that in online, to be able to go in and look at what has been the work that has been done. We'll also ask that our teachers be able to then also be able to go in and access it. As this week we're still trying to cross the T's and dot the I's on several things. Some of the standards and grade levels were a little bit more heavy in the changes than others. And so, but talking with our team, they will be ready to showcase next week for you all to access, and then maybe coming back and having a Q&A and getting feedback from the group.
Will we receive a link to be able to access it, or where will we access it?
You will receive a link that gives you access to all the folders.
Okay. It would be helpful. I don't know if they're identifying it this way, but similar to the way we do in policy, could new changes from last year be highlighted, be in a different color or something like that, so we can move a little faster and see it would be easy to identify what's new for this year. Is that possible to do in the format it comes out in?
Yeah, I will ask our team what would be the best way to do that so that you can easily see the changes and the shifts in what took place. I know like kindergarten, 3rd third grade and fourth grade had very little changes. So
Mhm.
you're not going to see, if that's the case, you wouldn't see a whole lot of highlights there because it didn't have to, but you would see significant highlights in other grade levels and subject areas. Remember, this year, the incoming ninth graders are the ones that are under the new world history standards. So you would see significant changes compared to what the traditional world history standards would be.
Okay.
So with that being said, are you indicating that first grade and fifth grade had the most changes in addition to ninth grade world history?
Yes, first and second grade and fifth grade.
Okay,
Kindergarten and third grade and fourth grade had less
the
changes.
fewest changes. Okay.
Then, of course, 6 on had big changes.
Yes, sir. Older students, older grade levels.
So we are going to receive a link sometime next week.
Yes, ma'am.
Will this just be for our viewing, or will anyone with Canvas or students or parents be able to take a look next week?
Now, this would be just for this
For our
committee.
preview?
And then
Okay.
if you give permission, I would like to allow our teachers to also
Yeah,
go in. and work
absolutely,
with
our
it.
teachers,
Okay.
for sure.
We'll make sure that gets done as well.
Okay. And I would say, not just this committee, I would say the full board.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Now,
Thank you.
what will be the mechanism if there are parts of these changes that we find or have concerns about and choose not to support to happen? Because we're talking about this coming out next week, feedback, we'd have one more board meeting and one more committee meeting before school starts. So, and I know we need to let everybody know it's not staff's fault. The state Board of Education was just treacherously late in getting this information out. So we're playing, I mean, it's like changing the whole game plan in the middle of the fourth quarter. But my concern is that we have one board meeting and one committee meeting before the start of school to react, adjust, or even vote to accept, not accept change or what have you. So how's our timeline going to work on that?
Looking at that, certainly the board will make the decisions on what is accepted and what is not. Of course, our students would be
And you're
expected.
proposing that at the August 3rd meeting to vote on the curriculum
Yes, sir.
for that? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So,
Our students are still going to be held accountable for the standards, right? And so that's something that the board will have to consider. So I would just recommend that, but certainly when we start school, we're dealing with Unit 1, right? And there are weeks built in for Unit 1. So are the changes, if it's a Unit 1 change, yeah, that's the pressure is on. But if it's a Unit 2 and above, we've got time
Right.
to do that. But there, as always, when you make changes, when you're flying, right, it's a little more, but those things are further out. And so taking a good look at them and if it's an early unit, we'll have to make that decision, of course, and ask the board to look at that. But if it's something further on, we've got some time and discussion and be able to make those changes.
So what I would like in preparation for your team sending the board information to preview next week is I would want to ensure that we're able to preview all the volumes that will be taught in the first 9 weeks for elementary.
Okay.
So I would assume that I'm just guessing that volume 1 is not the only volume that would be covered in the first grading period.
That's correct. Yes,
So
ma'am.
I think in my mind, I would like to see what the Union County curriculum team has prepared for the first 9 weeks, so that if we do need to adjust for the second grading period or whatever, we know what we're looking towards. The one question that I do have is I know that other counties, Moore County in particular, because every school district was so rushed and backed to a wall in getting this so late in the summer to prepare curriculum, because the state has been very clear that each school district will write their own curriculum. So the burden has been passed from the state to each school district to write curriculum according to how we want to teach the standards. So Moore County asked permission to delay the standards, presenting the standards in a year. Did you and your team or Dr. Houlihan ever consider, look, this is too late in the game? We haven't had enough time to vet this information. Have you felt the need that we need to ask permission to delay a year? Or do you feel like your curriculum team has been completely prepared in a very, very short window of time to be ready for the end of August?
I believe that they have done a good job, and certainly if that's the direction that the board would like to go, we can work on that, with our superintendent and making that request. But I do think that based on the feedback that I've gotten from our team, that they've done a pretty good job of having it all ready for our teachers to take and go. But I will work to get you that link as quickly as possible. And if you feel that is the case, then, we can jump on board and make those recommendations as well.
Help me with, let's make sure I'm clear on how the process works on this. The state comes down with the unpacking documents, and that, what I looked at, seems like an outline almost. It's our job to fill in the outline.
Yes.
And then from that, the teachers develop or utilize lesson plans that they already have. Is that pretty much
Yes, sir.
the process?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, as far as the lesson plan goes, does each school have flexibility in its lesson plan? In other words, if I have a child attending fourth grade at, say, Indian Trail, and I have a student in fourth grade at Walter Bickett, is the lesson plan the same? Because I know the Union County, what you've developed from the unpacking documents is going to be the same, but then does the school, and i.e. each grade level, have its own flexibility in the lesson plans? Is that how it works?
The lesson plans usually follow a pacing guide. And
Okay.
so when a teacher or a school develops their lesson plans, what the work that our teams have done has gone in and built out, if you're looking for activities for your students that are on this subject matter as part of the pacing guide to get through all of the standards,
Right.
here are 5 activities that we would recommend that you use. And so teachers go in and they choose. One school may choose this activity A, another school may choose activity C, but they accomplish the same thing and they've been vetted. These
Okay.
are the activities that we have researched, part of the
All right.
unpacking documents from the state that now you can use. Some of the unpacking documents we've not put on there. We didn't see the value in it. It wasn't very good, possibly.
Yeah.
And so
So there's actually another step in there, and
I didn't
that's
mean
the
to make a
pacing,
face, but
the pacing guide. That's another layer of information in there. The pacing guide, and then the lesson plan is developed by the teacher off of the pacing guide.
yes, sir. So
Okay.
we give them the recipe with all of the
Right.
the
Right.
items that they can choose to make their dish all
Right.
But some may use a little bit more of this spice, but it's all from here's our recipe.
And I would just want to make sure it all tastes good to follow your scenario. That it's all edible when
It
it
can't
comes
be
out.
all
Yeah.
just one, right? It
If
needs
it's
to
not
be
me
a
making it,
mixture
it
of-
should be okay. But so is the pacing guide consistent throughout the district? In other words, everybody has the same
is.
4th grade pacing guide.
It
Okay.
is.
Who writes the pacing guide, the district or the state?
That's a good question. I think we write our pacing guide. They give us the standards. They give us the unpacking documents. We decide how much time to spend on each one of these things to get to the
Okay.
end and what our students
Yeah.
will know.
Confirm who wrote this, the pacing guide, and make
Okay.
sure we have access to that as well.
Yes, ma'am, I will.
Because I know, and we're going to get to this, the other item, I asked for the lesson plan. But and I'll discuss what I was trying to accomplish, but it sounds like almost the pacing guide for my information is more of what I'm looking for, because that's going to say not only what's going to be covered that's in the curriculum we've developed, but when it's going to be addressed throughout the school year. Is that
That's
correct?
correct. Yes,
Okay.
sir. That's great.
All right. So
way to
The
put it.
pacing guide is your roadmap. It's how do you get from teaching this content or this standard from point A
Right.
to point Z. Now, the one thing that as parents we have to keep in mind is sometimes different teachers or different schools will get ahead or will get behind because of the, as a former teacher, if I had students that I gave a check for understanding or an assessment at the end of a unit,
Right.
and 90% of them did not meet the mastery, I needed
You
to
gotta
go
go
back
back.
and reteach. That may have put me another week behind.
right,
So they have flexibility,
right.
but the expectation is by the end of the marking periods, this
Right.
is where you should be.
Well, what I'm wanting to, and you've answered my question, I just want to make sure everybody's on Highway 74. I don't want somebody going up Old Charlotte Highway and somebody going up Idlewild Road, even though they're all trying to get into Charlotte. I want to make sure everybody's going on the same path. But you're right. You may be up here and I'm back here because I had to stop for gas. If I follow you through. Okay. All right. So I guess I would like to have some kind of exposure to and I don't want to see them all, but I'd be curious for my own information to see a pacing guide. I want to see all the pieces, how they fit together from what we get from the state to what we do to it, whoever does the pacing guide, and it ends up as the actual lesson plan. And then the teacher takes the lesson plan and she fills it.
We will be
that
glad to
works off it.
provide
Yeah.
all of that and
Okay.
kind of walk you all through that as well.
I think that would be
down the
very
road,
helpful to see
from
how
beginning to end.
we need to show parents how it comes down from the state. Here's what we do to it. Here's what the teachers actually comes out of their mouth or their instruction. It's kind of the flow chart of how the stuff comes out. That would be very helpful, I think.
I think that's a great idea, Gary. And just so that all of us are on the same page, when Dr. Breedlove and I met briefly last week to set the agenda, one of the ideas that Dr. Breedlove shared with me was that in the August curriculum meeting, we may kind of have like a show and tell to kind of, show us exactly what you just said. So I think, going back to what you presented to me last week was maybe at the August meeting, you show us the pacing guide, show us the outline, the standards that came from the state, explain to us what the UCPS instructional coach and their team put together, show us the pacing guide, show us some of the lessons, and maybe just touch on kindergarten, 3rd or 4th grade. But I think we would really like to see 1st, 2nd, and 5th.
Okay.
Take a deeper dive on the ones that had the most changes, and maybe the world history.
Yes, ma'am.
The principle's all the same, right? It doesn't matter what grade or what subject. It's all
Same structure. Yes, sir. Okay, yeah, that'd be great. And that by that time, you've had a chance to kind of and be able to ask questions as well and see after you've seen them. All right. That's great.
Okay, that brings us to a discussion for the lesson plan publication.
Well, I think we just did it. Basically, as a parent and as a member of this board, I feel that there's an opportunity for parents to know what their child is taught that day. I'll give you for example. My son, hey, how was your day? Great. What'd you study? What'd you do in social studies? I don't remember. What'd you do in math? I don't remember. So I would like to know. I want parents to know, and I want it to be consistent because we went through this with websites, teachers' websites, trying to get a consistent across the board way that parents can access that information. But if lesson plan is not the right vehicle to do that I want to know what subject matter and as much detail as I can. I was being taught in a particular area, and we talked about the pacing guide might be a better teaching parents how to use and what you can get out of Canvas.
Yes, sir.
And making sure it's there across the board. And I do not want to give our teachers something else to fill out, to write, to have to, as much as possible. But it's a consistent practice throughout all grade levels, all classes, that the information is there for those parents that choose to follow that closely. Does that make sense?
It does, yes, sir. And last year, going through the pandemic, in that, we've been for years pushing Canvas. Like, we learned a lot last year, and last year it was paramount that teachers kept up their Canvas pages, and we will continue to do that because of the current situation that we're in. And that's what we should be doing regardless of a pandemic and not, is using Canvas as our learning management system. It's where we put our lesson plans, where we put our activities, our resources. It's how we communicate, textbooks, or any links that we have, so students go watch a video and answer this and do that level of work, which is really what happens in the classroom. Even though I'm face-to-face, I'm still using Canvas because students are accessing all the stuff. Parents now, when we look at our parents, what they have access to, they have that level of access into, as an observer, to see all of that and access what their children are doing. And so when you have that conversation with your, what'd you do? I forgot. Oh, let's take a look. Oh, you did this and this. Tell me about this activity. Or tell me, oh, I see here you had a quiz today. How did you do on that quiz? What was it about? Those type of conversations. But Canvas, to your point, Mr. Sides, and Canvas has really become something that we want to be transparent with to all of our parents. And what's nice about being linked in as an observer, you will always be the observer. And if you don't have to go back in and re-sign up for anything. Once you do it the first time, this is to all of our parents. Once you do it the first time, you are linked with your child until they graduate. And so you will always have access to see what your child is doing, what are they covering in all of their subject areas through Canvas. And so that feedback, and then once again, if you're not seeing something as a parent that you feel that you should be seeing, now it's a conversation with that teacher. Hey, my child said, well, they did this, and I didn't see this in Canvas. Can you show that? And now we've got a dialogue between parent and teacher, and that's what should be happening. That's what as a teacher, that's what I would want from my parents.
And every year, remember, with that new crop of kindergartners, we have a new crop of parents who don't have a clue about Canvas.
Yes, sir.
And so this is going to be a continual process for everybody, and it's going to look different when you go from elementary to middle because the class is different. So this is going to be a continual challenge for us. What I hate to see is parents come back and say, I don't know what my kid's up to. I don't know what's going on. I get Power School after the fact and he's got zeros and I don't know along the way. Well, it's right there in Canvas. I didn't know that. Nobody told me. Nobody showed me how to get to it. What's the deal? I hate to hear that because that means that, we have an opportunity. We're not getting the word out.
Would you like to know exactly what's been done and what's available for parents right now so they can be prepared, as well as what the communication is? And
I would like to have a
ask Ms.
training
Rimmer to
just
come
as
up.
we're proposing on curriculum on Canvas. A dummy Canvas student, don't use mine, please. I don't want to see all those grades. But no, I'm just a dummy account. Here's how you go in through the parent portal. This is how you find out what the deal is here and what the deal is here. And then maybe here's a middle school student. Oh, don't tell us now. You don't have to do it now. But I mean, I would more than once. We need to do.
I can show you where the resources are right now. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
They're right on the
That'd
website.
be fantastic.
All
Sure.
And Ms.
Sure.
Rimmer, while you're uploading that for us, I was fortunate enough that my children graduated before all of this Canvas. Now they had Canvas, but they were well along in high school that I didn't have to monitor, their stuff. They self-managed. But if I was a new parent or an elementary parent or a parent that had never seen Canvas before, do I have to request my own parental username and password versus having your student's username and password? Because I think it would be a disservice to the teacher to think that Johnny is logging on at 11 o'clock at night when Johnny's really in bed, but mom is using his username and password. So how does this work? I would like to know, do parents receive their own username and password to access their students or multiple students' Canvas account?
That's a great point. And so we do have many parents who have indicated that they access Canvas using their child's username and password, which most often is the easiest way. But Ms. Merrill, like you said, that might mislead the teacher. And often the teacher is monitoring student usage in Canvas. And so you don't want to kind of mess up that data that the teacher might be paying attention to. So the best route is to become a Canvas observer. And when you become a Canvas observer, I'm going to show you how you can learn how to do that. But essentially, a Canvas observer is linked to a child or many children. So once that, just like Dr. Breedlove said, once that link is made, no matter what course your child is enrolled in, you will be an observer in that course. So at the beginning of this school year, when all those enrollments happen in the new Canvas courses, observers are along for the ride all the way up until students graduate. So that's a really great thing. We had a lot of observers last year connect with students, and now we don't have to reconnect again at the beginning of the year. They will just be enrolled in those courses as observers, just like students were. So I'm going to go ahead and show you. Does that answer your question?
Perhaps you're getting ready to show me because I still don't understand how to become an observer.
You got it. I'm going to show
and
you
how
those.
to access my multiple children.
You got it. All right. So I am on the UCPS website right here. I'm going to click over here, and I'm going to come over here to parents. And I'm going to click on the Empowered Family Portal. This is where we list all of our resources. And really, this is just what it says, a family place to kind of review the resources we have access to. And that's for students, children, and parents. I'm going to go ahead and click on Parent Resources. It's in both of these places for easy access. And this first box right here is really what you're looking for. So we have what we call a parent readiness checklist. This outlines the 5 steps that you can take to become an observer. We have it in Spanish. We also have a video of each one of these steps. So all of these resources, this will explain what an observer is, what you can see and what you can't see as an observer. One of the things that's really great about the observer role is that it keeps the other student and the other children's data safe. So you are only linked to your child. So let's say that there's a Canvas discussion board and you're an observer. You can see what your child has said, but you don't see the academic work of other students as well. So that's really important. As you kind of come down here, so observer student pairing code is exactly what you're looking for, Miss Merrill. If you click on this, it shows you how you can get that pairing code. You get that code and then you sign up for your account. There is that in print version, Spanish, and a video. So if you follow these steps 1 through 5, there's also a parent mobile app. Once you follow these 4 steps, you can use the app on your phone. And now you have access to all of that information from your mobile phone. So you don't have to log into a computer. You're logged into your app with your observer username and password, and you are constantly linked with what's happening in your child's Canvas course. I think there might be a link in the tutorial that will take you to the Play Store, but you most certainly have to go to the Play Store to get that app. Yep. So that shows you, or the App Store. Yep. And you have to put in a code, and then you're in, and it shows you kind of what you can see. You can, the greatest part about an observer is you can add multiple students to one login, and then you just toggle in between the students, which students' courses you want to see at a time. I am. Yep. Give me just 1 second. Let me pull this over here.
So you can download the app to a phone, not have to go to the UCPS website, then it goes straight into the Empower Head.
That's right.
I'm thinking the same thing. I know 2 young men that are so happy they didn't have this. Now I need to call a couple of universities to see if they have.
Can I ask a question while she's working on that? So since school's going to be starting back up and we're going to have like kindergarten parents, is there a way to make the path to get to that like somewhere where there's not that many steps? As far as getting to the tutorial, could we, like, the schools could promote it maybe?
I bet Tahira could add a tab or something to the homepage. So I think Sarah was asking if instead of going through all these different steps to get to it, like at the like the first month of school or something.
Yeah. So a lot of this is, well, every year we place all of this on our back to school page, which we drive parents to every year. And even during COVID last year, we pushed out a lot of information for parents to access this. And I think Casey mentioned there were 8,000 views on the Facebook video live that we've done. So, and schools also share this information during curriculum nights and open houses and all that. So it is, PTA meetings, and it is accessible. But we could look at either under the I Want To, but there'll be lots of promotions starting next week around our back to school webpage, and we'll have it there. Yes.
Are they, I know you mentioned that when school starts back and what have you, the training. So are they able to sit at a computer and someone show them, like she's showing us, the steps to get there?
Like if a parent doesn't have a computer
Right,
or
absolutely.
access, could they come into our media center and get help to set this up?
Yeah, that's typically managed at the local school level.
Okay,
So that is something that we will put on our general principal meeting agenda to make sure we cover in August that, you know, when we open the school year, here are some best practices that when you conduct these sessions that we would like for you to encourage to have technology available, you know, one-on-one sessions. And of course, if any parent ever needs help, we're an email away or a phone call away. We're happy to help at the district as well.
When you go in to register your child, the media folks could be there, and you can, especially kindergartners. Do you have an observer account set up in Empower Ed? No. Well, come on over here and I'll help you set it up and show you how to use it.
Or even, you know, hopefully we'll get back into, you know, meet the teacher night where, especially if you're a kindergarten parent and you've never been in an elementary school UCPS and this is your first time going and meeting the teacher. Should be a common practice that we could help explain to parents then how to get it, where to go, and if you need help, we can do it right now and right then. But I think Casey's ready.
Okay, so I have some test courses up here. These obviously are not actual courses that teachers are using because most of our courses are concluded for the school year right now. So these are kind of some relatively empty courses, but I actually have mine indicated as parent up here. Yours probably wouldn't say that as an observer, but I have 2 accounts. I have one observer account for my boys as well as a district level account. So I put parent next to my name so I know which one I'm in sometimes, just to keep things straight. But here as a observer, right, I can see these would be all of the courses that my children are enrolled in. And you can see here, for example, I have a student or a child who has 2 missing assignments here right underneath this, right? Or if there was something due today, it would be right here on this card, which is really nice.
And I like that because in Power School, you can't tell because there's a 0 if it's not turned in, but it could have been turned in, but it's the only excuse I get. It's been turned in, but it hadn't been graded yet. Well, that's going to be more accurate, correct?
Correct.
So,
This is going to be, yes. This is automatic if you've missed the due date. So let's say that something is due on Monday and the observer logs in on Tuesday. It's going to indicate that something was due on Monday and the student missed the due date. That's what this missing means.
And in all fairness to Power School, and we beat this to death, 0s are never to be used as placeholders because they haven't been graded yet. Right. There is a different code down at the bottom that the teacher has received the assignment. It just hasn't been graded yet. 0s are not supposed to be used as placeholders.
But you can see here, you can see the due date as an observer. You can see when it was due. You can see how many points it's worth. And if it was handed in, as an observer, I could click on it and see what the grade was. So I would be able to see what the record was for what the student earned on that assignment. As an observer, you cannot see quiz questions. You can see the score, right? But only the student can see the quiz questions.
okay, so how do you know what the quiz was about?
You would hope that in the introduction and the directions and the naming scheme, but for security reasons, we don't allow anybody but the student to see the questions.
So you hope the teacher makes a thorough description of the test quiz, what materials being covered.
Sure. Yes.
And I would assume and that all of the assignments that they had leading up to the quiz or test,
Supported
Or
that, the
supported
topics.
that,
And
thank you.
Yes.
So these are tests.
So these are actually the courses. They are called test course because we used them for testing. They're fake courses. But let's see if I can show you a couple of examples in here. This is what we call our sandbox in Canvas. The area that we play around and practice in Canvas is called our sandbox. So this just has some examples. I'm in them as an observer right now, and you can see this is where you'll see things like some content. If I click here, here's what we're learning about today. I can go to the next piece and I can, it's not going to connect sometimes. So this is a good example. Sometimes we have items that are in Canvas that are shared specifically with people within our Google organization. So Google Documents, Google Presentations, things like that. As an observer, unless you're a UCPS employee, you're not going to have access to some things. So once in a while, you might see something like this as an observer. Your student should be able to see that content right there. But there's you can add pictures. This is a professional development. I don't use this content with students. I only use it with adults. But you can see I've put a bunch of information here. And this is kind of what the students experience as they're learning through Canvas. They have links. They move to, I'm trying to find something that you might see as an assignment or a quiz. Let's see. So example of an assignment, this is an example of an assignment you would see with a quiz. You might see the information up here, the due date, how many points it's worth, what type of file it is, or what type of assignment. And then the directions that the students see, you would see that. You just don't actually see what questions come up and things like that. Well, this assignment is saying this is what you have to do to complete the assignment. As an observer, you would see what your student uploaded if Mason or Parker Rimmer had uploaded an assignment to this. They just didn't.
Click on that link that says then click on this assignment. Is that the actual assignment?
Yes. Oh, it should show up. Yep.
So this is amazing. Thank you so much, Casey. So I guess it goes back to asking all of our teachers to please keep their Canvas updated with all uploaded supporting, reading, activities, homework, quizzes, tests, asking our teachers to do the best that they can to keep their Canvas updated. So here's a question. Is there any way that we can work towards, I'm not saying August or if it would be over the next semester or this school year, is there a way to connect the state guidelines or the pacing guide? Let's focus on the pacing guide. Is there any way to connect the pacing guide for reading, math, science, social studies, so that a parent can know or see that the teacher is 56% through the pacing guide, for the year? Where is that class on track throughout the year to complete the third grade pacing guide, for example? Is that possible, or something that you think you can work towards so that, the parents, number one, can see the pacing guide for each grade level? And then if the teacher checks off when they complete modules, it would let you know where your student or that classroom is on track to complete that pacing guide for the year. Just an idea.
Yes, ma'am. I think that's a great idea, and that's something that we will, I will go back to our team, figure out the best way to do that, to make sure it's easy access for parents, so that they're not having to maybe go to 15 different places to get all of this information. How can we do that in a succinct way where they see their child where they are, the information in Canvas, and then also have access to a pacing guide, so that, are we on track? Hey, I see that we're a couple of weeks off, from where we need to be. What is the plan? Having that dialogue is always a great thing. But yes, we can do that.
And again, I think our teachers and everyone has enough burden on their shoulders right now. But just, hearing and seeing all this, I think over time that would, I think parents might want to see the pacing guide and see the modules that their student will be getting that semester or that year, and then see progress.
Like you said,
Work towards that.
Absolutely.
I think that'd be great.
I have one of, oh, go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, I have this kind of a heads up. I'm going to ask at the end of this first semester, before we take the holiday break, how many parents we have registered as observers. I'd be very curious. Because like you said, we need to let parents know about this option so that they're not going in through their student's account, just because that's the only way they know, because the student logs in and says, log me in so that I can see what you're doing. So I hope we get it. if we do our job right, we get a good participation rate through parents that have signed up as observers.
And you know, if you have multiple students enrolled in Union County Public Schools, I would think that being an observer would, and having my own username and password would be the best way to monitor multiple student accounts rather than having to have multiple student IDs and passwords to get in and out. So I would encourage parents to get their observer set up. Any other questions, comments?
In reference to what Mr. Sage said about encouraging or seeing how many parents are involved, is there a way that you can that you will know from each school the engagement of those individuals who are part of Canvas? Okay, so each school has a way of being able to say, okay, all right.
How many parents have become observers?
Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
Okay. If possible, could I see that from District 1? Can I access it, or can it be from those schools? And I don't need it today or tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
We can do the
okay.
report.
And the reason I say that is because we all know that parent engagement helps with the success of children. And so we really want to make sure that parents, I would have to take a whole nother class on this. I mean, honestly.
What I might suggest is to run that report by school at the beginning of the year and then again at the end of the semester. If we give it, we don't have anything now to give you because the year has to roll over. So I would recommend that maybe once we get to September, let us run a first semester kind of like pre and post. What does it look like at the beginning of the year? And then after 9 weeks or even after the first semester. So that might be something Dr. Breedlove to take a look at.
Yes, sir.
And Reverend Kirkpatrick, I want you to turn and meet our Empower Ed guru. You need to get to know Miss Casey Rimmer. So thank you so much, Miss Rimmer. I do appreciate that. And the Merrill boys had the privilege and honor of being in her classroom when she was a teacher at Porter Ridge. So, okay. Before we move on to discussion and action items, Dr. Houlihan did point out to me that our committee may want to go back and consider making number 2 social studies curriculum, the writing update, an action item. Would you like to speak to that and explain?
I heard someone, and I can't remember who it was, ask if this needed to be approved by the board at the next, the August board meeting. And I don't know, Dr. Breedlove, if we need that to be the curriculum, or at least the Unit 1 curriculum, if that needs to be approved. Because based on the timeline, that's in a week and a half. And so is that something we want this committee to recommend to the full board for approval? And if so, then we might want to consider reconvening this group if possible before then, i.e. next week or before the board meeting, to conduct that Q&A session where we can go through the pacing guide and kind of go through the process. I just didn't know if there was enough time between now and then to go through those steps to have board approval for the curriculum. But I did remember someone asking, do you want this coming to the August board meeting?
Which Dr. Houlihan makes a good recommendation only because our next curriculum meeting would be the end of August after school has already started.
And so I guess, and we don't have to make this decision now, I guess, Ms. Merrill, but would this committee be able to come back together next week to go through that Q&A with staff? Or do we want to delay that? I don't know.
Possible to send that out first and do a little homework on it and then reconvene?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's going to be.
That would be our recommendation.
Absolutely.
Spread stuff like we talked about, and then
Send it out to you whatever day we can.
Our team will work to get that out as quickly as possible to you so that we have time to reconvene if now that we have that information.
even if we do it Zoom,
We could,
before the board meets. So you're saying we want to make the decision that the committee blesses it before it goes to the full board, rather than just go to the full board and they're going through the whole thing.
that would be my recommendation.
Which was also going back to my point, when you indicated sending it to the committee, and I recommend sending it to the full board.
we can send it to the full board and then have this committee reconvene. And I'll have Dr. Breedlove and Miss Merrill, if you don't mind, talk and figure out how you want to do that. Reconvene for that Q&A, for that demo, for those kind of that walkthrough, and then seek the approval to take it to the full board if the committee feels like we're ready.
I think that's a very good idea. I think that's important because if there are points of contention that we conceivably have a 4-4 split on or doesn't approve at all, I think we need to give the full board that heads up that, hey, we need to really hash this one out because the committee has a problem with that one.
Or at least look at the first 6 to 9 weeks so we can get this, and then come back to other parts that are later in the year. And that might be something to consider too. Anyway, it's your.
So I think, I would like to hear the committee. Do you want to make this an action item today or wait until we have an opportunity to look at this and reconvene?
I would like to have the information transmitted, time to digest, and then the committee either reconvene remotely or before the next board meeting to discuss particularly any points that we have questions or issues with.
And I'm going to go ahead and say, I think this is too important to do via Zoom. So I'm going to recommend that we're in person. That way, if we want to talk to, a staff member or something, or someone on the curriculum committee can jump in and help, collaborate and answer questions and help us understand how to help the community.
For the first of next week, we will try and push that out, knowing that it's really about the first 9 weeks, and we may not be finished with everything at the later on, but that we still have time for that.
In particular, we can focus on those red paragraphs with the changes. So that should be a fairly deal, right? So I don't know if it's a meeting before the next board meeting or it's.
So I say I'm thinking give us next week and then maybe meet after that, reconvene after that, after we've had time to absorb it.
Yeah, then
Oh.
yeah.
Unless you met that Monday, you could meet unless you like.
Board meets a week from
Mm.
Tuesday.
Right. That's why
Yeah.
I'm saying it's a very short time frame.
Short window.
So unless
Yeah,
the
the
committee
end of
was
the
able
week.
to meet, on that
On
Thursday of next week or the Monday before the day before the board
And I
meeting.
won't know until I see it and
Mhm.
see how many changes, first of all, there are, and then how many issues or questions I have
Make sure you.
with the changes. So I can tell if this is a 1 hour or this is a 30-minute meeting or if this is a 1 hour knockdown drag out.
Well, as long as we are posting 48 hours in advance, I think we can get into this next week. Miss Merrill and Dr. Breedlove and I can talk about how to schedule it and when, and get your feedback along the way. And maybe at the earliest we could consider before the board meeting. And if not, we'll make that decision then.
I think personally, I would recommend that our goal be reconvene around Thursday.
Of next week,
Mhm. If he's thinking that he would get us the
first part of the week.
the first part of the week, then reconvene by Thursday.
There's another committee that meets Thursday, isn't there? Where's my?
Yep, maybe, hold on.
So that'd be the 29th of July.
Yep,
Doesn't, is it
SPTT and policy are the day before
the day before?
on Wednesday
Isn't-
and I know we have appeals,
in the afternoon.
yeah, in the afternoon, so that morning, I think we would be available. Thursday morning on the 29th.
29th.
Mhm.
And so you're just are you going to send us the whole thing or are you just going to send us the first grading period? Did we decide that?
Probably will have access to whatever has been created up to that point, but working with Dr. Rogers and the team, making sure that we have everything for that first grading period in there.
First grading period. Okay.
Or the 9 weeks, looking at, of course, we have a 6 weeks grading period at the secondary level,
Yeah.
but a 9 week at the
Yeah.
elementary, but let's go 9 weeks to make sure that everything's in there for a 9-week period to buy us some time
Okay.
for the others. And so you're not trying to digest everything at this point, because we will come back. We can always come back.
Yeah,
After
Yeah.
after the 9 weeks, if you see
Small-
stuff in
small-
there. So
right
let's
now, the
chunk it.
smallest chunk
Yes, sir.
as possible. Yeah.
And I foresee, each month getting an update as we work through these new standards and, keeping, encouraging parent involvement. And, because if everyone's in the community concerned, then we're going to need parent involvement. And then maybe each month or every other month, or especially going into like the second grading period or the third grading period, making sure that we're able to continue seeing what our students are going to experience this year with the new standards.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I don't want to set a time right now because I think Dr. Breedlove needs to talk with his team, verify if they can get it to us on Monday or Tuesday. So I think, just be on the lookout and just know that we may reconvene on Thursday. But let's give Dr. Breedlove time to, go back to his team and see what they think that they can have. Okay, so we are going to move into action items, starting with 2021 through 2022 digital resources renewal for iReady.
Thank you. In your packets, we do have a request for iReady. This is a digital resource. I have asked Dr. Rogers to come forward, as well as this is a request from our principals that she's been working with. This is the first time, by the way, I think that Dr. Rogers has joined the team here that you all have been able to meet. And as you remember, former principal of Shiloh Valley Primary, who is now our K-12 director. And she's done a lot of this work with our principals at getting feedback for iReady. You can see here on the request for iReady, it is both math and reading. And you can also see the breakdown for how it would be funded at this time. What I will say is we are looking at an additional resource for iReady that I am not ready to present yet because we are still working on funding and how that would be. But an additional request from our principals is the Teacher Toolbox, which is a small group lessons and activities based on where each student and their assignment is and gaps may be. This is a toolbox to allow those teachers, and you've seen them in the classrooms, that the half circles, where they work with students in small groups on their specific deficiencies and gaps that they might have in reading and math. And so we will be coming back. That's an easy flip of the switch if the board, the committee approves to the full board and the board approves that we can have that made available very quickly after the next meeting, but we're still working on funding on that. But questions about this specific request, if you have for Dr. Rogers, but this is, we have used iReady in the past for both reading and math. So this is not, this is new for this year because we used iStation last year, but we are kind of going back to something we used in the past.
So I have two questions. Is this different than the digital resources, the digital library that we discussed last month?
It is a digital library for, I'm trying to think of
Reading.
Mayan?
No.
Oh,
Last month, the board approved, I believe, our renewal with Follett, which is our digital learning management system specifically for media centers and libraries. And I think that was devoted to media centers and libraries. This is devoted to classroom use with classroom teachers.
Okay, so this is completely separate. So my second question is for Follett from last month and this one. Will a parent observer, do parents have access to these digital resources?
Parents will have access to reports generated by these resources that can be provided by the teacher.
So they won't have access.
Not
Like-
that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I get iReady and Mayan confused. Is iReady the one where you can, for reading, you could pick up a grade level and a book and it kind of figures out the difficulty level and kind of challenges you but stays along? Or am I getting that confused with Mayan?
So iReady is an online platform that will support our schools with intervention supports. So it does have assessment components so that the teacher knows where students are and then it places students on an instructional path.
Okay.
Did I already replace M class or
iReady replaced iStation.
iStation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Which replace
Yeah.
M class? Okay.
Yes.
So
Okay.
Mayan is the one where you pick a book and you could, it's kind of like a Kindle
Yes.
kind of thing. Okay. All right.
So this is a teacher's ability to evaluate
Evaluation tool.
each individual student in their class, where they are in their reading growth.
Right. So it supports our intervention process, which
Okay.
is really important in identifying gaps in what students need. And then the teacher has access to that information to target instruction.
And then teachers can share that report in grading periods or in consultation with the parents.
Yes.
Where they are. Okay, so this is very different than the Follett Media Center access. So, we'll discuss Follett at another time. I don't want to waste time today, but I do want to maybe for you to make a note for us to go back and provide parental access, whether it's through their Observer account, but allowing parents access to the Follett Library of Books, digital resources. Sorry for confusing those two today, but it was the same question for both platforms. So today is kind of like a testing mechanism so that a teacher knows what level each
Yes.
student is on in their classroom.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions about this? So I would entertain a motion to approve the 2021-22 digital resource renewal for iReady by Curriculum and Associates to take to the full board at our August meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to sole source purchase for PRO Learning, the Art of Education University, LLC.
We have a request from our art teachers. This is a professional development and resource library for our art teachers, PRO Learning. There's also another sole source for our Drama Teacher Academy. You see there on the agenda as well. But both of these are professional development resources and theater resources and lessons for teachers. These are renewals. These aren't first time uses of these products.
I read this is pending some action by DPI as well.
That is correct. And I guess the language we would use that upon, because now we have to go through DPI on any time that there's a sole source as well. But if we get that approval, this recommendation is that upon approval from DPI, yes, we can have those resources. We don't foresee any hang up there, but that is now the new process. that
Okay,
we're
I'll make a
following.
motion that pending DPI approval, we recommend approval to the full board for both the PRO Learning and the Drama Teacher Academy.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. So that checks off 2 and 3 and brings us to number 4, 2020-21, the UCPS failure report.
In board docs, you have that failure report for the last school year that was run. You will see that there are 4 tables associated with the report. High school at table 1, middle school, elementary schools, and then at table 4 is a composite of all 3 levels. As you can see on table 1, the number of students in grades 9 through 12 who failed one or more classes went from 21% first semester to 18%. Our middle schools dropped from 31% to 25% second semester, and then elementary dropped from 13% to 10% second semester compared to first semester. Overall, grades 3 through 12, average first semester was 22%, and that dropped to 18% for second semester. Currently, we are using the information to support our students in summer learning camp, as you know, as identifying those students needing that level of support, as well as Dr. Houlihan has asked staff to set up meetings with each of our principals, and we are currently doing that. And Dr. Houlihan and cabinet, as well as members from the academics team, will meet with every one of our principals to review this data. And during these upcoming meetings, principals will share with us what they consider to be their accomplishments for the 2020-2021 school year, what worked well, what were their strengths, what are their wins. They will also share the current state. You know, have they gone through the data? Yes, they all have, by the way, and they know their data. But, you know, what are the contributing factors to the data, to this baseline information? They will also share what lessons were learned from last year as we work on continual improvement. And then the big question is, now what? What's their plan for improvement of student outcomes, student engagement, as well as what we learned in summer learning camp is the joy of learning. All right, how do we continue that momentum moving forward? Followed by anticipated outcomes, and then lastly, the last thing they will share with us is what are their needs. All right, and what can the district help provide them for that continual improvement? Tied to this is the second attachment in board docs. To continue our support to our schools, we are asking approval from the curriculum committee and the full board approval to provide $900,000. You know, that we did this last semester with $400,000. Now we have a full year of working with our schools to provide in elementary and of course through the elementary and secondary emergency relief fund, that's the ESSER funds, to our schools to support their efforts toward improving student outcomes this year as we work to bounce back from last year. That money can be used for things like temporary positions, teacher tutoring outside of the regular school day, hiring of tutors, transportation expenses, as well as staff development and possible workshops. In addition, this would be a second allotment, you know, compared to what we did last spring, last semester. This past spring, the board provided our schools with the first allotment, and then this allotment is based on a full year's effort. So the request is $900,000 in the ESSER, out of ESSER funds. The allotment formula provided by our finance department is the same that was approved the last time. And so what you will see when you go through that, if you look at our failure report, you will see that tiered towards students in schools with the most need.
You gave, please, go ahead.
So this is for this upcoming year, the amounts?
Yes, ma'am.
And then they got amounts in the spring, was it?
They did. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
And then the tutoring positions, I've seen we're hiring for math tutors, but how are they going to get the tutors? Only through if they apply through the district, or what if they need like reading tutors?
And that would, once again, they can post those for individuals. Reading is difficult, much more
Right.
difficult than it would be for math. But yes, it would be posting those positions and hiring on those additional tutors. Or is there a third-party vendor that provides this level of tutoring that we may have access to as well? And I know staff is currently working on a list of those third-party vendors as well. But finding, usually you're going to find a retired teacher or somebody who is certified in teaching reading. It's just not, as a college grad, and I may be very good in math, I might be able to be able to teach that level of math, but reading is very specialized as well. And so more than likely it's going to be somebody who's already trained in reading.
Or maybe we could get a lot of reading buddies.
That
Anything would help, right?
That is correct. And our schools are always looking for reading buddies.
Right. So if for math, like if we only get so many people that apply, do they try to just equally disperse in the highest need schools?
That's usually done by individual schools, but if the district has if those individuals come to the district, yes, we will try and push to the most needs at that point.
Okay. And then do you know which ESSER this is coming from?
ESSER 2 funds.
How or what documentation will be required, or what plan does each school have to submit a plan on how they propose to utilize these funds?
Yes.
They're given the categories that you mentioned, and then they have to submit just like a funding proposal for a grant, how they're going to use the money.
That's correct. There are specific categories in which these funds can be used, and in order to expend these funds, they have to meet that criteria. So
Okay.
It's just not asking for anything under the sun. They are very specific, and we are given those guidelines from the federal government.
So for instance, 60,000 for Monroe Middle School. Okay. I'm thinking of middle school. How are you going to spend that? Well, probably tutors, maybe. So I would just be curious as to, well, after the fact, if nothing else, how these schools actually utilize the funds.
And there are temporary positions that they can expend these funds
Okay.
on as well.
All right. So you're looking for a motion. This is an action item.
Mr. Sides, can you hold off?
Oh,
I do
sure.
have a question.
Sure.
Okay, so I would definitely like some board input on what I'm about to say. So I am a little hesitant on distributing all of these funds out. So I wanted to talk through something with this committee. Seeing that some high schools or, some middle schools had an extremely low failure rate, like 5%, versus some schools that had, 40, 50% failure rate. The idea that I wanted to run by the committee is, can Shauna McClam and Dr. Houlihan present to all 53 schools that they have up to this amount if they use it? I really don't know. Let's use Marvin Ridge, middle and high. Let's just cut to the chase. They had Marvin Ridge Middle and Marvin Ridge High had an extremely low failure rate. I am not sure that they will be able to use or need $16,000 or $13,000 for remediation and tutoring for 5%. So I think, and Dr. Houlihan, I'm going to ask him to speak on him meeting with all 53 principals. So my idea is that Shauna holds all the money. We don't send it out to all the schools. Shauna holds the money, and and all 53 schools have up to what we see here in front of us. But if they don't use it, if those schools don't use it or need that $16,000 or then maybe it can be used at a school that does need it.
So are you proposing up to the proposed limit on this spreadsheet for each school, or schools can apply for whatever they feel like they can use up to the 900,000 is exhausted?
Or if they don't use it all, we can use the remaining funds for next year's summer program. So I'm going to let Dr. Houlihan speak because he was explaining to me he's meeting with all 53 principals.
Part of the sense of urgency on this one for the August board meeting is to let our principals know their proposed budgets as a planning allotment. Because as they come in to meet with staff and I, all 53 of them in the next couple of weeks, part of what we're going to ask them is, how are you going to propose to use these funds? And what are your needs? And some may come in with a greater amount of needs. Some may come in with a lesser amount. But this at least gives us a not to exceed planning budget. If we need to redistribute or reallocate, as we make amendments to our ESSER report that goes through our finance committee every month, we can operate like that, where we can make proposed changes. But this is really a planning allotment where we can say to principals, as you present your high-level school improvement plan and your proposed use of these funds, at least let them know what's available, but not to exceed that. If it's to exceed, we'd have to come back to the table.
So you're saying like the principal, and I've just used this for example, please, Marvin Ridge folks, don't come after me. But let's say the principal says, I don't really foresee how this would be necessary for us. We'll pass. And so that goes back into the pot, potentially.
I'd rather know that up front to redistribute it than know it, I just couldn't spend that money and here it is,
Right.
So that's part of these conversations.
I would also say it can't be redistributed without coming back to committee.
Yeah, we would come back to this committee and it would be part of the ESSER updates to finance as well.
So what I'm recommending or asking this committee, your thoughts on the finance department holding this money and allowing Dr. Houlihan and Dr. Breedlove to have an opportunity to meet with each principal. Because here's my question. First off, absolute kudos to the students and teachers at Cata, Marvin Ridge, Middle and High, Weddington Middle and High, Piedmont. Schools, some schools and students did extremely well, which you can see here in this report. But that may be their normal failure percent without COVID. You know what I'm saying? So, 5% may be the average in a non-pandemic year for a failure rate. And some of these students that did fail may have gone to the summer program, and maybe these numbers will improve. Maybe they passed in the summer program. But what I'm suggesting or would like feedback from this board is, some schools may not need that 16,000, 20,000. And if we hold that money, then maybe some of that can be used in next summer, in the next year's summer program, because we did receive, $2 million or a few $1 million to run the summer program this year. And we may need these funds if they're not necessarily used to help fund next year's program.
On top of that, I would say on the opposite end, any of the schools that are struggling, if you come up with a plan that Dr. Houlihan and his folks can approve, and it would happen to exceed that individual allotment that's on this spreadsheet, but administration feels like it's worthwhile and will have an impact, I want you to have the flexibility to go that way too. Flexibility that you can pass, and the flexibility that if you want to double down and everybody's on board, go with it, because that's what these funds are for, is to impact the ones that have been hit the hardest. And we see where the ones are that have been hit the hardest. So I'll take some money over here to put it over here if we really think it's going to move the needle for these folks that need it. Does that make sense?
And again, I think that's part of the flexibility, and the again, more important, that as staff meets with principals and looks at their improvement plans, that we know what the plan is for every individual school. And we can always come back to committee with any amendments or adjustments.
So are you basically looking for approval just to approve at this point, the big pot of 900,000 to be divvied out as
Not
later distributed at a later point based on
their
what
need.
you
It
decide?
it would not be distributed until we have those, until staff and I approve the plan submitted by the principals based on need and based on other data points beyond just the failure rates. So
And you feel like that would be at a future meeting. So really all we'd have to do now is just approve this pot to be held, to be addressed at a later point. Is that where we
Yes.
are right now? Okay.
So I just want to confirm, this is a public document on board docs for the community to see how their school or what our needs are in the community, because we are starting to receive a lot of emails from parents that want to volunteer. And I think, we've had a lot of parents, say, how can I help? What schools need reading tutors, math tutors, whatever. So if this is a public document, parents out there who want to volunteer their time or services in Union County Public Schools can see the schools that they could go volunteer in and reach out to those principals and say, hey, I would like to volunteer in your school. What can I do to help?
That's a great idea. And yes, ma'am, that's much needed.
Okay.
So I will offer a motion that this committee recommend to the full board for the set aside of up to $900,000 of ESSER 2 funds to be distributed in a matter to be decided at another point. Does that sound like the right motion? Basically, just set aside the pot of money right now to be held, to be decided, distribution to be decided at a later date?
that would be our recommendation. Finance committee can also, if we want to deal with it like that, finance committee can also help with approving any amendments or adjustments along the way. Because that report comes to them every single month anyway.
But they haven't approved this. They haven't addressed
But it would
this.
go to the full board. So the members of the finance committee will see it as part of the full board meeting because it's gone through this committee.
Friendly amendment to send to finance, because that's next week.
Work with finance.
I mean, they could look at it
Fine.
next week.
I don't think we have a
they
finance
need it.
committee
Oh, no.
meeting next week.
No.
Make the decision to just go to curriculum, finance doesn't have a meeting before the meeting, you need to approve it.
Okay.
But the other thing, the I-ready thing has to go through finance because
So we can come back to that. For this one, that we need a recommendation to the full board for the total amount. Any
Okay.
amendments we make
Like I said-
based on improvement plans can be approved by finance.
Do you want to withdraw your amendment then?
I am withdrawing my amendment.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay. All those in favor of sending this to the full board at the August meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you.
Now to go back, Ms. Merrill, as we heard, number one, the I-ready. Instead of that being sent to the full board, I believe what I heard was the request needs to send to finance because finance would need to approve that one
Because it's.
because it's ESSER funds.
All right.
And then it would go to the September board meeting. And I think from timing to get to teachers, it can happen very quickly. So we need to clarify that motion and that movement.
Okay, let's just go back to the 2021-2022 digital resources renewal. I would like a motion to send that to the finance committee for the I-ready by Curriculum and Associates at the next finance meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Can I just ask one question? When you get the recap from each principal, like, will we get kind of like a little quick blurb, like what their, plans are, maybe?
Yeah, well, let us think on how to do that. Historically, this committee has historically heard, well, there's several things. Number one, schools that have been identified by the state as low performing, We've always had them come before this committee and then go before the full board, not to present to the full board, but to present to this committee their restart or their plan. That comes here.
Curriculum.
What the board always will get access to is the school improvement plan for every single school. Those plans have to be approved by the board, typically, Dr. Breelove, by the November board meeting to be submitted. So you will get the school improvement plan for every single school in a drive through a link. And part of what principals inform us the next 2 weeks on their plans would be on their school improvement plan. That might be the best way, I think, to give you access to all that.
And I think to piggyback on that question, I think in August or September, September maybe, just doing a final update on the summer camp program and knowing how many students were failing at each school and how many were able to pass because they attended the summer camp.
And I would be curious how many credits were able to be recovered,
earned.
how many were needed to be
Mhm.
recovered versus how many were earned. That might be a good
Mhm.
high school data point to look at if we can have it. Probably not until September at the earliest. Committee.
Okay, so at the items to take to the full board will be the sole source purchases for art and drama and the failure reports that we just discussed. Our next meeting date will be August 19th, if necessary, here at the PDC at 10 a.m. And if there are no other questions or comments, I will accept a motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you.